Just want you to know the facts that over the last year we have given over $1 million to support missions across this planet as a church, because it really is who we are, and especially today want to celebrate that. This morning we have an incredible opportunity with us and in front of us this morning. Another friend of Burnt Hickory, his name is Oleg, and he has come this morning over 10 plus years of ministry. He has worked with Burnt Hickory, worked with Burnt Hickory businessmen, Burnt Hickory Orphan Care Ministry, and lots of family here at Burnt Hickory. And so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to get to hear an incredibly challenging ministry from someone that is living still in the middle of Kiev, who was only able to get out of Ukraine on a humanitarian visa because of the good work that he is doing in that country. And he is going to challenge us this morning from the ministry that he is doing to show us that we can plant where we are to reach the people around us. Oleg has established Radooga Ministries over 10 years ago, working with kids, working with business leaders, working with many different people across Ukraine. He's going to tell his story, but especially what we're going to hear this morning is what has happened over this last year during the time of war and how God has moved in his life. I want you to check out this video, but before we get to the video, would you just give Oleg a hand, and would you tell him thank you for being with us this morning?
We decided to develop just in case plan. We booked a hotel in Western Ukraine. We developed all the actions, like, in the case of cellular service, this is what's going to happen. This is where we're going to meet. You have to have full tank of gas in your car. So we just developed that to calm down our team. Well, little did we know that that plan was exactly what we were going to follow later on the 24th of February. 5 a.m. in the morning, we heard the sound of bombing, and we woke up. We started collecting people all around Kiev. After collecting our team, we were able to get out of Kiev, and that took us 5 or 6 hours, what would usually take half an hour or 40 minutes to leave the city. After that, we headed west. For the next 36 hours, we were driving in a caravan of cars with lots of women, little children, just to get everybody as far possible as Kiev. One of the best things we could do for other people who were coming was to free up this space and for us to cross the border. Of course, men stayed. We have to be in Ukraine. And so all of our women, 18 people with children, they crossed the border on the way to Warsaw, and we stayed in Ukraine. And that night we were invited to a meeting with a group of different charitable funds and nonprofit organizations, and we were trying to understand how can we help here in Ukraine right now. And that's when we had the idea of creating Spirit of Victory Humanitarian Fund, and we started providing for all the internally displaced people.
I joined Radooga team and became engaged to humanitarian aid. We started to expand and help Ukrainian regions that were in need.
While we were providing humanitarian aid in Ukraine, our team that crossed the border never stopped running our online school. Many children lost their friends, so what we decided as a team to do, to offer our school free of charge. Our school grew from 277 students to 12,000 children. One of the things about our school is that we always believe that even though you're online school, we are social people, we have to have relationships. So we've launched Unity lessons. We had 4,000 children who were connecting every day to Unity lessons to connect with other children, to connect with other teachers. And so for the next month, our team from Warsaw, from Poland, where we were hosted, they were providing all of that for children all around Ukraine, all around Europe, in many countries around the world, all the children who connected to our platform. In Poland, we've seen exactly the same thing as in Western Ukraine. Poland was exploding, and we started looking where else we could move our team, and that's when we made a decision to move our team to Spain. So my wife, who never traveled for more than 2-3 miles around Kiev. She would drive her car to subway, and then she would get on subway and travel around Kiev. She traveled with a team of women and children for 3,000 kilometers, crossing the whole Europe all the way from Warsaw to Spain. bring peace, we could establish our team there. And one of the important things is that our school never stopped for a minute. While we were serving people with humanitarian aid, we realized that at some point, this intensity is going to go away. At some point, people will wake up and realize the tragedy that they experience. And this tragedy is going to be not as visible as hunger, not as visible as bullets. It's going to be much deeper. And we need to do something about that. Well, since for the past 28 years, we've been doing camps and we've been working with children, we realized to use that experience, that knowledge, in helping children save their childhood.
There was a lot of humanitarian aid. Everyone helped the armed forces of Ukraine. Volunteers helped people who were under occupation, but the children were left on the sidelines.
The idea of this project is to help children distract themselves from everything that is happening in their families and country. We wanted children to experience joy and happiness. We noticed the great crisis the children are going through. They are traumatized and they need help. That's why we launched the camp project. We have already held 100 camps and reached more than 5,000 children.
So even though our team is almost 100 people, our team is actually much larger. Every single person who contacted us, every person who supported our camps this summer allowed us to serve almost 5,000 children this summer throughout camps, throughout all the country of Ukraine, helping kids save their smiles, helping kids save their childhood. Thank you everyone for supporting this effort. Thank you everyone for helping us heal these kids from trauma and helping them be kids.
Good morning, church. So good and also so hard to be here. We have long-time relationships with many people, with many families at this church, including the Smiths family who are here. And a month ago, my wife is sitting over there. You can wave your hand, Lena. She's, and my daughter also, who attends KSU. A month ago, we were here, and we were meeting with Brian Foster, with Rod arranged that meeting. And Brian said, hey, we have Missions Week coming up. You need to return back and share your story, share the things you've been going through. So I started working on my sermon, and I created this really cool 3-point sermon. You know, you don't do 4 points because people won't remember more than 3. And you also don't do 2 because it's not worth crossing the ocean just for 2 points. So I really worked on my sermon, worked really hard, and then I sent it to Rod Smith, and the response I got from him was no. Rod, what do you mean? He said, well, Oleg, you have a story. You don't need a 3-point sermon. You have a story. You need to share that story. And that was one of the hardest challenges that I received, because it meant bringing up, trying to recall all the things that I was trying to numb in my life, all the pains. So I went to my Facebook and to all the pictures and started looking at the things that were happening in my life, all the videos that I was recording during the war, also to my phone, trying to recreate, trying to recall the things that I've been going through. And the verse today is from Ecclesiastes. There's time for everything, season for every activity under heavens, time for war and time for peace, time to weep and time to laugh, time to mourn and time to dance. And basically, if we were to sum up that verse in one phrase, what that would mean is that change is inevitable. It doesn't matter whether you are a kind person or not. It doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or not. It doesn't matter how long you've been walking with the Lord. All of that doesn't matter, because change is going to happen in your life whether you want it or not, just like it happened in our life in Ukraine. We were not planning on this war to happen. In fact, let me tell you how much I was not planning on this war to happen. So about a month and a half before war started, February 24th, we started getting all these messages from, CIA, Pentagon, hey, Russia aligned its army in Ukraine, and it's going to happen, like they're going to attack tomorrow. And then, no, they're going to attack next week, or they're going to attack, tonight. And what did I do? How did I prepare for war? Well, 30 days before war started, I went skiing. And that's how much we resist change when, we don't want that pain in our life. So we're going to do everything. We will continue our lifestyle the way how it was before because it gives us some kind of security in life. Well, what happened 10 days before war? My friend Randy called me. He said, Oleg, what do you think? And I said, well, it's all going to happen. Can you bring that next slide? It's all going to happen in the eastern Ukraine. I mean, look at that. Look at the map of Russian army. You see, it's all the way on the west to the left near Polish border. Lots of Russian army in Belarus, north of Ukraine, and some in the east and some in the south. What was my response? And I've seen this map, and I ignored it because I wanted my life to be normal. I didn't want that change. And so he said, Oleg, why don't you take your team to Hungary for unnecessary staff retreat? And I said, no, don't worry. So what did I do? I took them for a staff retreat in the suburbs of Kyiv. And then he said, what are you going to do if it all begins? I said, we're going to get in our cars and we're going to drive. One thing that my wife and I did do, not because we were strategic, but because we wanted to calm our team down, we created a plan that actually we followed when the war started. Second phase of war started February 24th. So February 24th, we wake up 4 o'clock. That's the thing. It is so Nazi to bomb people when they're asleep. And so we heard the sounds of bombing. Russians started bombing. We didn't have, this is how prepared we were. We didn't have a rescue suitcase. We didn't have any food packed. We were not planning on that at all. And so Lena and I begged for my son and my wife to cross the bridges because I thought Russians would bomb the bridges so that people wouldn't be able to evacuate. And I was going to stay and then find my way out of Kyiv later. So we got into our cars, we grabbed all the people from our team. One of the most emotional moments during this trip was people who were trying to take their animals with them. And I was that rude person who had to say no. And they had to leave their dogs that grew up from little puppies and cats and everything on the streets, just hoping that, that they would survive. And that was that morning of getting everybody together and heading west to Western Ukraine. So we crossed the bridges. We were in that. You can see the next slide. This is what Kyiv looked like. So we spent 5 hours in that traffic jam. Very few cars going into Kyiv. Massive number of cars leaving Kyiv. And my son had his wedding planned for the month of May. And he said, Dad, I'm not going to leave without my fiance. His fiance said, Oleg, I'm not going to leave without my mom. So we had everybody on board traveling. Yes, we did have one pet. We had pet rat, or rat pet. We had that one, because that's the only thing we could take with us. And so that traveled all the way to Spain. And so we were trying to escape from Kyiv. And when we came to Western Ukraine, it was we were at this hotel, and very soon that hotel was turning into this hostel where the hotel staff were throwing the mattresses on the floor, and they were because that town was exploding. So all of my team, like this women weeping, everybody wants to return back to Kyiv to fight, and we had 4 staff who stayed in Kyiv, and they said that's the most selfish thing. Look at this. You want to do something for people. You want to, you want to go help. Actually, she said that's the most selfish thing you want to do because you're not trained to find. You cannot provide first aid. And actually, if you were to return, then you would be eating food that's already becoming very scarce in Kyiv. And so that's when we made decision to cross the border. So the next 36 hours we were on the border. And the next picture you see is I took it from my car. So we were in a car moving one foot every hour, but there were people just walking with grocery plastic bags with kids in their hands, pulling suitcases just to cross the border. At some point, I decided to go sit in my car in take a nap, because when you wake up the whole 36 hours, kind of you can't sleep. And then the next moment, there is this phone call from my wife, and my wife says, honey, I'm on the other side. I just crossed the border. They opened traffic arm, so I never kissed my wife goodbye. As fast as Russian army was approaching, it was just a matter of a few days until they were going to come and kill us in Western Ukraine. And that was the beginning of my time of weaving in this war. That night, I attended a meeting with a group of pastors who were struggling to help everybody, and we had no idea where we were going to stay, because we couldn't stay in that hotel anymore. Our team left. There was just me, my son, and my technical director. And so this guy, Andre, we call him Father Andrew. Modern day saints are not the people with a skinny face and a staff. Modern day saints can be guys driving their Audis, and he was the kind of person. He was abroad when the war started. He made a decision to leave his wife and 6-month-old daughter to cross the border, understanding that he would never ever be able to see them again and leave the country again. So he hosted us, and he bought lots of carpet and mattresses, threw as many of them as possible on the floors in his unfinished house. And what he would do at night, during the nights, he would go in his town, and he would see people walking with the grocery bags and all the refugees, and he would go to them and say, hey, I have a place you can stay, which is also lots of weird people who did strange things in the midst of this. But he would go to those people and say, I can help you. So he would drive them in his Audi to our house, and we would wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, hear the noises. He would bring lots of people in. He would feed them. They would take a shower. They would sleep a little bit, and then he would send them off to Hungary and Slovakia. And that's what the modern-day saints look like to me. So we were in this house. Let me tell you about my team. That was me, my son, who is in the middle, my technical director, who is an Israeli citizen who didn't leave the country. His wife did, with my wife, and Red Pet, and his daughter. The next person, the only girl who was with us, was Marina. Her husband is a Ukrainian officer who's been fighting on the front lines since 2014. Imagine what she's been experiencing. And by the way, later during the war, she did get married over Zoom. That's a new feature of Zoom, get married over Zoom. And that works in Ukraine. So she got married. Sergey is a wealthy Ukrainian businessman who owned big 30% of Ukrainian water delivery, of Kyiv water delivery market. And also, that's not, it doesn't matter how rich you are, how many interests you have, change may happen to you as well, like that. So his wife had to go abroad, and then Andre worked for a British accounting firm. The next group of people were a journalist, Roman, Sergey, who spent 3 days down in the suburbs in Kharkiv. Kharkiv is on the border of Russia, was heavily bombed, and without showers, without anything. His wife told us horrible stories about stuff that was happening. He worked in Dubai doing detailing for Rolls Royces and Ferraris and Maseratis that sheikhs have there. And then the next person is Dima, who was a very strange character, because he would say that Christians should not fight, Christians should not protect their houses. We would ask him, well, if anybody would attack your wife, would you protect your wife? Yes. So what's the difference? And he couldn't answer, but he would say that Christians. Later, he was kicked out from our house. He was passed down to another ministry where he could say things like this. So whenever you are, modern day saints not only drive Audis, but they can also make such executive decisions. And whenever you, as a Christian, get into that type of situation, where do you try to find hope? I try to find hope in the Bible, right? So I open the Bible. If you were to Google Bible and hope, I guarantee that this verse would be one of the first verses to come up. And it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you." And that's where I broke, because that was enough. For me, at that point, was the moment when I didn't believe the Bible. And my cry to God was, God, this is such a lie. What about all of those people who were killed? What about all of those people who were burned with the used tires that they would put over the dead horses in Irpin and Bucha? What about all the everything that happened, they will never prosper. They will never have good life. And that's, one of the things about change. Change means something dying in you from your previous lifestyle. It can be anything. It can be, you had a very nice, sweet child in your house, and all of a sudden this child is a teenager, and you have no idea whether it's even your child, And it can be something going on with a spouse, with a friend, with anybody. It's something dying, and it hurts, and you weep, and it's so hard. And so we were. I was just really struggling with that, and I couldn't find hope in the Bible because for many people, they would not prosper. And what was dying in me is my Hollywood version of Christian life, of everything's hard, and then, the Job Hollywood version, where, and you will prosper at the end, and you will have more cattle, more women, more everything, and that's something that I did not believe was going to happen, because Russian army conquered so much of Ukrainian land at that point. When you, as a Christian, face any kind of struggle, and your faith is attacked, not your pocket, not your relationships, your faith, it is very, very difficult. Because your faith, if you're a true believer, your faith is not just one of the segments of your life. Money is one of the well-being, your health, your relationships, doing good work are the segments of your life. But your faith is your core that everything hangs on. And when that core is snatched from under your feet, that's when you feel absolutely hopeless. So in our house where we lived, every day somebody would just break. Somebody would lay the whole day on the floor just weeping because they were realizing that their old life died. Somebody realized they would not be able to see their wife or children. Somebody realized they lost their business. And everybody was struggling. There were days when I would wake up in the morning and go yell at everybody just because of that hopelessness and that emptiness that we were experiencing. And even though I didn't find the words of encouragement for me in the Bible. I actually find it in the words of Austrian Jewish psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who spent 2.5 years in the Nazi concentration camps, and which actually there is a verse in the Bible that very clearly speaks about it. But when I read that in the midst of all this hopelessness, I read his quote, and it said, the first people to break in the concentration camps were people who believed that everything was going to end soon. The next were those who believed that all of this suffering will never end. And the only people who survived were those who focused on work every day, on their actions every day. And so those were two things. So there is a verse in the Bible that very clearly says, don't worry about tomorrow, worry about today. Does that relate to every life situation? No, but it does relate when we are in the midst of suffering, when we're in the midst of tragedy, and that definitely helped me to focus on day. So February 24th, people started sending us many messages. Some messages, and were sending us also support. Some messages were like, hey, we're praying for you. And since I was one big open reactive wound, my answer to them would be, that's it? And some people would just disappear. They wouldn't say anything. And some people said, no, I contacted our governor, I contacted our senator, and I asked them, to help Ukraine. And these days, you don't have to go to Washington, D.C. to protest. You can protest from your sofa, and you will scare the politicians if you can do that in masses. And so we asked many people. Some people would try to engage us in their trauma, American political Biden trauma, and say, oh, we're so sorry about our government and that they don't do anything. Actually, honestly, I don't think that your next government will be able to do more than what your current government has done for us in Ukraine because of all the things that I watch on TVs from different representatives. So so people would just start supporting us, and some people would start coming. Rod Smith was one of few Americans didn't travel. Department of State, everybody said, do not travel to Ukraine. No, Rod Smith, with all the kids and wife, he gets on the plane, he goes to Ukraine. That's how much we listen to our spouses. And so a few things that helped me Something that didn't help me at that time was people who were trying to be smart and give me advices, because you have no idea how I feel. You have no idea what pain I'm experiencing. Do not give me those advices. Don't be Job's friends. Two things that help: words and work. Words. Our board of directors made a decision to meet with us every Sunday morning. You know what we did every Sunday morning? We wept. Because we had a board meeting, I had to give report. So as I gave report, actually I was getting rid of that pain that was in my body. And Len and I would talk about how we're doing, and then we just weep. We would sit and weep with our board. And I was the luckiest out of my whole team that I had people who would weep. These are people like you on the board. They have comfortable American lives. They wake up in Orange Beach, live, on the Gulf. They wake up here, and yet those people have chosen to weep with us, to go with us, to be with us the whole time, even though they didn't have to. And so that helped us a lot. Doing my blogs and sharing about things that we've been going through, about our pains, about taking war personally, was a lot of help. People who were sending us money really helped us. The next thing we did was focusing on our work, and so we started providing humanitarian aid. Lots of grocery stores shut down, so people like dairy farms were pouring hundreds of thousands of tons of milk in the ground because nobody was going to buy it. So we arranged for the pastors to get that food directly from the local food producers, and they were getting that from them. My son and my nephew were delivering humanitarian aid. And they called me and said, "Dad, we're in this village that was just liberated. We need water." And I'm like, "Guys, what are you talking about?" People in the village were the most equipped to face this. They said, because they have wells and they have, canned jars with food and everything. And they said, no, when the Russians were leaving, they knocked down all of those jars and they took canisters of diesel and poured it into people's wells so that people wouldn't be able to drink. And so that's what we were doing, in all of those months. Another thing is, as we were delivering food into the refugee shelters, you walk into this big open space like this, and there are lots of bunk beds, and there are parents there. The only thing they do, they're stuck with their phones. And for months, they wouldn't say a word to their children because, you're traumatized, and your children are traumatized, and you do need to talk with them to help them talk through war, but you have no idea how. And so they would just detach from their children. So I thought, man, we should do something for these kids. And since we were doing robotic and coding classes for kids, I thought I would drive to the besieged Kiev, and I would bring all of those robotic kids, because if Russia bombs our office, they will burn, what are they good for? So secretly away from my wife so that she wouldn't know and wouldn't worry about me, I went to Kiev, and I picked all of those robotic kids and also a coffee machine, because I have a good coffee machine, and you cannot fight without good coffee, and it really helps you fight. So it was really weird going through checkpoints with lots of robotic kids and a coffee machine. They're like, "Who are you, guy?" So I brought it to Western Ukraine, and we started robotic clubs. And it's not arts and crafts, it's building robots. It's serious. And you could see how kids were into these robots and how they would redirect their attention from war. And one of the sweetest moments was 3 months later, some of the parents started joining those children around tables and building robots together with kids. That was the first time in months that parents connected with their kids and played. And as we were doing humanitarian work in Ukraine, as we were, launching more and more of those robotic clubs, my wife was with her team in Spain and in Poland. And you can see on the next picture, graduation party from one of the Ukrainian schools. And that's what Russians did. They don't just bomb military objects. They also build schools, and they also bomb schools. They also bomb maternity houses. They bomb kindergartens. And because it's such an army of rapists and looters, that's who they are. And they think that they're going to scare us, that we would, give in. And so my wife continued at school. We were running, to our knowledge, the largest digital online shelter for the kids, where they could connect with the new friends, with the new adults. We had many American teachers who were involved, and they said, "Man, we love connecting with your kids because they're the only kids in our lives who would say thank you for actually being with them." So that was our time to help the kids and also to be healed as we were. And that's one of the things about, even if you are suffering, that's serving is one of the things that you could also do for others, and that would also help you heal. Besides time for war, there's also time to heal. My wife has been through a psychological first aid training, and she said that even if a war would have stopped today, it would take another 7 years for children's emotions to stabilize. That means the kids in Ukraine today who experience war trauma will never, ever, ever be able to return to the same emotional state that they had been before war started, but we could at least help them stabilize a little bit. We were running summer camps. That was the craziest idea, to run summer camps in the midst of war, again, to redirect their attention. And we were running those camps, and so this was 6 months after war started, and we were working with the kids and helping kids. We thought trauma was gone. And that's the thing about traumatized people. Very often you don't see it. It's not like they have black face or red face. They look normal. But as soon as they were playing outside, we were running games for them, and as soon as there was a thunderstorm, those kids ran into basement, hid onto the tables, and were screaming. Because trauma is something unseen. Trauma is not something that many people are going to talk about, but it's definitely there. It's definitely their hearts. And we are on the edge of losing the whole generation of Ukrainian children if we don't help them. And so I know that Ukraine is not in your news anymore. And it is still very, very hard for us. The war is not over. The hunger is not over. Trauma is not over. And my plea to you this morning is, please don't give up. Please don't give up on Ukraine. Please don't give up on these kids. We're committed for the next 7 years to be helping these kids. Another challenge to you guys, we're not the only one with trauma. I'm sure there are lots of people in the States, maybe somebody you're walking with, maybe it's your child, maybe it's your friend. There are people here who need somebody to walk with them, just like many of my friends, like my board, walked with me. Somebody that can weep with, somebody who can be just be with them in the times of darkness. So, and maybe you are the one who is that victim. Maybe you are the one who is struggling with pain. Maybe something in your life that died from the past, and you're struggling with all of that inside. Very many people there were people who came and they tried to cheer us up, pretend there is no pain, and that doesn't help. But somebody who can walk with you, be with you. Do not walk alone. I would have never made it to where I am today if it were not for people in my life who wept with me. Mourning, when you lose something, is good. It clears you. It draws you closer to God and to other people. So I beg you not to give up on us as a country. We're not going to give up in this war, definitely. So we're going to stand, but we need your help. And these kids need your help. And there is somebody in your life who needs help. Let me pray. God, thank you so much for being near when we don't see you, because it's really, really dark. For not giving up on us when we are reactive, when we don't believe you, when we don't trust you, when the words you say in the Bible contradict what we know or what we think we know about you. God, I pray that as a result of all this suffering and all this strategy, somehow, in an unknown to me way, that you would be able to bless us as a country, to bless people who are here, to bless people who experience struggles. And thank you for the lessons of pain that you've given me, and I'm not sure what's going to happen tomorrow with me, with my family, but thank you that today we're alive. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Let me bring this to why I wanted us to hear this story. Today's Missions Sunday here. One thing that after talking with Oleg that really struck me is that if he can live the gospel in such a way, even in the midst of war, in the midst of being divided from family, in the midst of not knowing what tomorrow brings, where am I? Where am I? And I can't tell you how many excuses I pour before the Lord, right? When I know he's calling me to do something, move in a direction to do something. One of the things of this last month, of just thinking about Oleg and his ministry and how they are still not knowing what tomorrow looks like, living the gospel out. And God has convicted me of how, Lord, can I make steps of obedience every day? Church, this is what we're going to do for our invitation today. I just want you to put that thought before the Lord today in your life. Believers, to say, hey, God, where have you planted me to flourish and to represent your kingdom, Lord? Lord Jesus, walk with us during these next couple of minutes. Speak to us, God. Show us how we can be the hands and feet of Jesus. It's your name, Jesus. Amen. Let's stand and sing together.